welcome to Artipret. This is a channel where we look at art and do a little bit of thinking about it. This video is going to be super relaxed. I have my notes in front of me. I have my book. This is the book I use to take notes to every show that I watch. And I have my notes in my iPad as well. It's going to be a more relaxed video where I'll be reviewing two beautiful performances that I watched as part of San Francisco International Arts Festival 2025. So this particular arts festival is curated in such a way that you have dances, you have music, and all forms of art. And the one I'll be reviewing today is two different Bharatanatyam based pieces presented by Jyotsna Vaidee and Sweta Ravisankar. Two beautiful performances which is centered on the experience of women and femme presenting people. It's a really beautiful topic to talk about because it's very, very relevant in today's time. The two productions together are two faces of the same coin. While one talks about the history of women's literature and the voice that women had to express themselves, shows how far we've progressed. But despite this progress, there are a lot of places where women are still having a really difficult time with education and literacy. The other one is something that's more universal that we all face. It's about the menstrual saga. It's about dealing with your periods. Let's start with the first one. This is by Jyotsna Vaidee. She is an award-winning Bharatanatyam choreographer and dancer and a founder of Samudra Dance Creations. She has received multiple awards such as Natya Ratna from Nritya Shiromani and Best Performer Award from Chennai Sabas. I am a huge fan of her dance. I've watched her before, I've seen her Margam performances, and I really love her presentation. This one was very unique. It is called Fearless Women, a celebrations of women literature. Let me read the excerpt. Innumerable women poets and writers of South Asian origin remain relatively unknown. In this dance work, soloist Jyotsna Vaidee explores the stories of India's early women writers and their works. Words that interrogate injustice with searing questions of gender and faith raising their voices. It's time that we listen for our sake. This presentation had two different songs. The first one was Jatiswaram in Raga Bhairavi, and the other one is loosely based on the first autobiographical author called Rasundari Devi. We will get to that piece in a while. Let's talk about the Jatiswaram. As I mentioned, the Jatiswaram was set in Bhairavi Raga, and what I liked most about it was the choreography was very traditional, and it was really refreshing to see traditional choreography along with modern elements of interweaving poetry from, I think, Sangam literature. I hope I'm remembering this right. There is an interweaving of the poetic elements and the nritta of the Jatiswaram itself. It starts off with a very slow poem, which is steeped in subtle abhinaya with a little bit of bhakti in it. The beginning jati is short and crisp. Then the traditional mayadus are done, followed by the Korves. It's very beautiful to watch. The Natwangam, so they she was accompanied by live music, and the Natwangam was very nice. The only criticism I have is that we couldn't hear her voice that well. I think it's because of a mic issue or there was a sound system issue, as far as I remember. But the Natwangam itself was pretty good. It was very strong. Again, there is poetry interwoven after the Anupallavi, and there is a soft bhakti, and the sthai is maintained very well. Snigdha Akka was providing the vocals for that day, and she did, as usual, a fantastic job. What I really liked was that in the Charanam, there was an increase in the pace. The way that the Jatiswaram itself is constructed is that the swaras are closely interweaved, which creates this dynamic movement to the song. And the poetry which was interwoven before this segment was also little fast. So the pace of the poetry and the swaras matched really well, which I really enjoyed. And I also liked that the choice of the Jatiswaram in Raga Bhairavi was a beautiful match, because the feeling of bhakti can be expressed really well in this raga. It's again very refreshing to see this kind of a choreography where there is a traditional nritta aspect with the poetry aspect, which is mostly Abhinaya. Next, we come to the centerpiece of this performance. It is loosely based on the life of Rasundari Devi, a Bengali author. She was the first woman autobiographer in this work called Amar Jeevan. This particular piece done by Jyotsna talks about a woman's hopes, dreams, and the challenges which arise while pursuing these dreams and finally accomplishing them, and the satisfaction and the joy that comes along with it. It was a beautiful journey to watch. It was a roller coaster of a ride. And the storytelling element was very beautiful. So there were songs that were sung in Tamil. And along with that, Akka had a vocal, like spoken word sort of performance as well, along with her dance. This was again very nicely done, which kind of explained to a global audience or an international audience what was going on, which I really appreciate. And even though, like, a lot of us are trained dancers and the audience did have a lot of Bharatanatyam dancers, it is still very good to have this sort of an explanation where we understand the dancer's intent. I think it's really important, and they did a fantastic job with it. The dance piece begins with her kind of performing her daily chores and kind of looking down and just talking about her life. Not particularly looking at the audience, but feels like talking to herself, which totally matches with an autobiography, that kind of a vibe. And the first time she looks up is when she searches for a book. And there you can see that spark of enthusiasm, that passion. And she looks at the book, and then you understand the importance it has for her. She talks about how she feels that she's being trapped, like a beautiful bird in a cage. She says that she is known for her beauty, but that's all there is to her. or that's how the society perceives her, that she is very beautiful and that is all she is. But she talks about how that's not completely who she is. It's There is so much more to her. She has hopes, she has dreams, and I think the desperation of being trapped definitely came through. There is also a beautiful metaphor of flowers blooming only to wither, which kind of parallels the previous section where she talks about her beauty, how she is perceived as very beautiful and is in a cage. But this beauty is not something that is everlasting. At least the physical beauty is not something that's everlasting. And the flower blooming only to wither shows the impermanence of this kind of beauty that we look at, the skin deep beauty that we look at. It again is a reminder of how we are so we have so many faces. We are not just this one note thing that is defined by one quality. It reminds us that we have so much more to us. The next section talks about her childhood. So, when you're very young and the gender differences or being perceived by your gender hasn't yet set in, there is a sense of like equality among girls and boys. And when the boys go to learn words and they go to learn in their schools, she feels a little left out. So she goes and asks for it. She says, I want to learn. But she's shunned. Then, thinking that it could be a skill level, or at least I understand it that maybe it is a skill issue, that she begins to learn it by herself. She begins to learn basic letters, and the orchestra here supported it really well. There was a chorus of e, and so on as she started her learning process. And with whatever she has learned, she goes and says, I have accomplished this. Can you please let me learn more? And again, she is shunned. This goes on to show that it's not a skill issue. It's not about, oh, whether she is deserving for this because she's smart or not. It is a clearly gender issue because she is born in a certain body that she cannot gain access to education. It is very disheartening to look at, and the reality of this difference kind of hits her. Then there is a prayer to Shiva and Shakti, and this sort of aspect of Ardhanarishwara, which shows the equality of man and woman, that they are united, they are one entity, and talks about the strength to survive in this world. And she asks if this is her only fate in life, that she is trapped and has to do these things, that is set in the world, that she has to do these things, this mundane worldly life of household chores, if that's all her fate is. And the story changes, she is that she never lost her love for learning, for books. And the parallel to the initial part where she looks up at books with that hope, it starts again. She's drawn to learning. This time, she just opens books and starts tearing pages to see if she can keep it by herself and learn by herself. But her chores and her life continues. The mundane nature of this household chores, which is very repetitive, and it goes on and on and on, and it's so overwhelming her because, as mentioned, she believes that she is meant for so much more than just this. The helplessness, the hopelessness drives her into this mode of where she says, I am going to learn how to read and write. I am going to get access to these books, access to knowledge. And she starts learning all over again. Starts with the letters. Again, the chorus starts e. And you see how she starts learning the individual letters, then putting each letter with the other and forming small words. Then the words form sentences, the sentences form paragraphs, and thus it shows her progress of being literate, of showing how she has progressed to learn this new skill. And then she starts opening her mind by just reading and consuming this stack of knowledge. She takes it all in. And it is my interpretation that when she looks and searches and gains this sort of knowledge and reads about other people's stories, I think it bolsters her own confidence to know that her story is important and needs to be out there in the world for others to read. At least this is my interpretation. And she starts writing, and it starts off with writing regularly in front of her, and it transitions to her writing in air. It's like she's reaching for the sky, and that is so beautiful to watch. It kind of gave me goosebumps. And this doesn't stop there. She continues to teach other people, shares this knowledge, and make and having a positive influence on other people's lives. This is such a beautiful story. It's so inspirational. Like I said, it shows how far we've progressed. I mean, being literate, being having this access to education is something that we take for granted because it's so common. But there are places in this world where women and girls still don't have this access, and we need to remind ourselves that even though we have all of these, there are other women out there who need support from us to gain this as well. I had tears by the end of this production. It was just so beautiful. The music composition by Snigdha Akka was just so brilliant. It was so beautifully layered. Like I mentioned, the chorus had that it was so powerful. And then there was a lot of Tamil poetry which was interwoven. And of course, there was a narration by Jyotsna herself. It added so much power to the entire production. And like I mentioned, there were a lot of us in the audience who could clearly understand what she was going for. And this sort of clarity is, I think, really important, especially when dealing with international audiences and helping them gain connection to what was going on. Overall, I really, really enjoyed this production of both the Bhairavi Jatiswaram as well as the autobiographical nature of Rasundari Devi. The only criticism or the only thing I could say that could have been improved is because we're talking about a Bengali author, they could have had a little bit of Bengali culture seeped in or give nods to Bengali culture. Maybe they could have incorporated some lines from her biography, her autobiography, and that's just my 2 cents. It's still a very beautiful production, and if she performs it again, I highly recommend that you go watch it. Let's come to the second half of the beautiful show. This was performed by Sweta, and uh, let's talk about her a little bit. She is a Bharatanatyam performing artist, teacher, and choreographer with over 3 decades of dedication to this classical Indian dance form. She has performed extensively across US and India, bringing a unique blend of rhythmic precision, physicality, and innovation to her work. She has a master's degree in Bharatanatyam, and She teaches in her school, Sharada Kalanilayam in Oregon. She is also a good friend of mine, and I really look up to her. And this was a very unique production. The roller coaster of emotions continue. Like previously, you had the dejection, the being shunned, and then finally getting the hope. And then we have this next production by Sweta where it all comes down, which shows how today we don't give importance to women's health, and how a lot of us are ignored and are not taken seriously about our pain and our suffering. This production was about menstruation, about having your period and have the pain and all the discomfort that comes along with it. Let me read uh, the introduction to it. Imagining pain, the Menster saga. In this piece, a woman's lifelong suffering beginning in her teens is depicted as she confronts disbelief and self-doubt amid undiagnosed pain, embodied by the menstrual monster. Through Bharatanatyam and yoga inspired movement, this dance drama illuminates the unseen struggles of women. So, a lot of us are not believed when we talk about our pain. And again, let's talk about this as we go through the different aspects of her production. It's the sense of being lost, about not being taken seriously, is definitely a key point, and it really resonates with so many women and femme presenting people. Similar to the previous one, you have a narrator who reveals the story to you as the production goes on. But unlike the previous one, there isn't any lyrics. It's just beautiful jatis with amazing Natvangam that shows the different aspects of the menstrual cycle. So it is so cleverly done. The pace of the jatis, where there is a lot of pain, there's a lot of discomfort, is a little slower, and with more overwhelming feeling, with confusion, with a desperation, there is an increase in pace. And this is so beautifully done. And the dance also reflects the same. It starts with showing a 14-year-old getting her first period. It kind of marks the end of childhood, of being carefree, and a beginning of this painful journey, I would say. I mean, it's not painful for everyone, but let's again come to that point a little later. I think the confusion, the utter embarrassment, the shame that is associated with that period, and not being able to talk about it, or having this sort of giving nicknames to it, not addressing it for what it is not very helpful, especially when we want to seek proper help. This embarrassment is so much more true when you're young and you're a teenager. And of course, with age and experience, you tend to overcome all of these. The beginning part of the production kind of talks about the menstrual cycle itself, especially the first to 7 days where the pain gets worse and there's a lot of discomfort, followed by 16 to 21, around 16 to 21 days where you are just so happy and carefree and you're in cloud nine because you're free from all that all the complications. And then again, by the end of the cycle, you have the premenstrual syndrome, and it comes with discomfort and pain again. This is shown for across the ages. You have a teenager, then you have someone in their 20s, and you have someone in their 30s. And again, this pattern keeps repeating. It shows that this is not something that happens once or twice, but this is something that happens over years, or it happens over decades. This is something that we all have in common. So this cyclic way shows on this cyclic nature of having our period shows that it just goes on and on and on, and sometimes our life revolves around period. It's all about, I have to plan for my period, or this happens during this event, or I need to go on vacation and then I have my period. I have important work deadlines and I have my period. So your entire life kind of revolves around it, or the opposite. Like, yay, I don't have my period during this. So this is something that is always there on our minds, and that is definitely shown, and we are reminded of that. The next thing that happens is, because of this discomfort or having this sort of pain, you go to a doctor. And going to a doctor is again not the most comfortable feeling. You It's very embarrassing. It's You feel so much discomfort when you're being tested. Sometimes when you tell that, oh, I have painful periods, they're just like, yeah, it's normal. They kind of normalize the whole thing because it happens every month to everyone who has a uterus. And this shows the ridiculousness of even some of the healthcare providers themselves. Not all, of course, but this normalization from the healthcare providers to our day to day friends and family to ourselves, we normalize it so much. And like, yeah, I mean, period is painful, you have to get through it, it's something normal. And I think the production makes a very good point that, you know what, this may not be a normal thing, and it's okay to feel these things, and you're not just thinking, it's not just in your head, the pain is real. And again, like the visual storytelling of this to show the painful parts but the joyful parts, like I mentioned, with the jatis, and the dance choreography itself is just so beautiful. I really enjoy watching it. And the soul sucking nature of periods is definitely carried across. And like I said, this period pain is so normalized. And the narrator here does a very interesting thing. There's a small monologue that is repeated again and again. It says, this is normal. Maybe you have a low tolerance towards pain. Maybe it is genetic. Maybe, giving a lot of maybes and kind of hinting at, like, it's your fault. Is it something that you are thinking, or it's about you? Is the pain real? Do you have low tolerance? Are you making a, a big deal out of this that happens to us all the time? And it keeps raising the question again and again. And the next part is where you are so desperate for solutions. You go through different treatments or you want to seek different treatments. Of course, this is not mentioned in the production itself, but I want to add this. We were always told, oh, you need to have an active lifestyle, you have to do yoga, you need to walk, you need to do gym or dance, or you should be active, and if you're active then your period pain will be less. But I've heard this personally so many times. It's just not true. Sometimes, even if you're active, the pain is bad. Sometimes the pain is not there. It's good, but it's so unpredictable. There is no way to say when you have this intense pain or not. And the next thing that they talk about is taking a birth control pill. Again, this is something that works for some people, but suppose you miss a day, you have to start all over again. And then it is really hard to keep track of these pills and take it. And one other point I want to add is sometimes if you already have some mental health issues like depression or anxiety, these pills can just make things so much worse. Yes, it helps regulate your period, but it also has a negative effect on your mental health. And sometimes there are other side effects as well, like physical side effects as well. Then the next thing that they get is the patches. The patches initially work, but it leads to aging and other problems. So that's again something that's not a long term solution. And sometimes, again, it's not mentioned in the play, but the dance drama. But another solution that people tell is that go for implants. It's an invasive procedure. You don't know if your body is going to reject it or not. It's not a great solution. This just continues, this cycle just continues, and again the dance drama kind of talks about maybe this self-doubt, blaming yourself, this kind of overwhelming feeling of helplessness. It all kind of comes together, and then finally you have a doctor who says, oh, you know what, you have endometriosis, and that feeling of final, like that relief, and says, I finally know what's wrong with me. And to be validated that your pain is real is something that's amazing. But that's the irony of it all. Getting a diagnosis for endometriosis should not be a happy thing. But how women's health is so ignored, and getting a diagnosis at all is just something which is a positive, I guess. And this just continues. And we see that um, the main point of this dance drama is to say that your pain is real, and we see it, we feel it, we empathize, and we are going to be each other's support system. And that's a really beautiful message. Let me read a few common symptoms of endometriosis. The most obvious is painful periods. Pelvic pain and cramping may start before the menstrual period, and it can last for days into it. You can also have lower back and stomach pain, and this is the first symptom. There is pain with bowel movements and urination. There is excessive bleeding. It can lead to infertility. And you have other symptoms like fatigue, diarrhea, constipation, bloating, or nausea. These symptoms are more common before and during menstrual periods. Let's talk about another survey which was done. It's called Just a Period Survey. It was done in February of 2025. Survey of 3,004 UK consumers, men aged 16 to 65 and women aged 16 to 50. Talks about the different aspects of your period, like how do you perceive it, how do other people perceive it, and the stigmas attached to it, the shame that's attached to it. So there is, they say that over 53% of women and girls have been shamed in relation to their period symptoms, and almost 32% say that this happened more than once. Again, we're talking about UK specifically, and we're not talking about other parts of the world where it's viewed with an even more, like, even bigger taboo. It's a real problem. And there is a lot of dismissal. Women who had their symptoms dismissed say this was mostly likely by their partners, 26%, healthcare professionals overall, 23%, male family members, 26%, female family members, 20%, male colleagues, 19%, male friends, 19%, male healthcare professionals, 17%, female friends, 14%, male manager or boss, 14%, female healthcare professional, 13%, male teacher, 13%. So there is this entire culture of dismissing a woman's pain because they say, oh, it happens every month, so it must be normal, or you're just sensitive to pain. There is another statistic which says that around 4% of women say that there are no negative signs during period. That means 96% of women have faced some or the other complications. And another interesting statistic is that almost all, or 97%, experience painful period. And 42% who experience period pain typically experience very severe pain. I really like this particular production by Sweta because this is a very tabooed subject, even though this happens to 50% of the world's population. And there is a sense of shame and embarrassment attached to it, but they did it so gracefully. They talked about it, they were very open, which is very refreshing to see. They didn't sugarcoat it, they didn't call it by random nicknames you use to just reduce the impact. They called it what it is. It was a very refreshing production to see. And it was also very nice to see this kind of solidarity between women and say that, okay, we see you, your pain is real, this is something that happens to all of us. There is, especially in this culture where you're not open about your period, you want to hide that you have your period. It's something that we all experience once a month, and there is no shame to talking about it, which is what I admire about this particular production. Again, it was very beautiful. The last aspect I want to talk about is the costuming. Everyone wore blue and gold, and I was just joking around, wearing blue, feeling blue. That was a good color scheme. Again, the costuming was really interesting. It started off with the 14-year-old or the teenager wearing langa blouse, which is again so quintessential to a lot of girls in India, especially South India. Then the 20-year-old and the 30-year-old were wearing chudidar with very nicely draped dupatta. And I love this aspect of costuming because this brought down the reality of our situations. It was not set in a different world where you're wearing your Bharatanatyam costume or something. It just brought down to ground level the sheer mundane aspect of wearing a salwar kameez or a chudidar showed that this is a very real, visceral thing that happens to a lot of people. It's not set in a universe which is set in a different time period. And then finally, Shweta wore a sari, and this is just my, in a dhoti sari, this is just my understanding, where you had different age groups. The teenager, you have people in their 20s and people in their 30s, while Shweta wore a sari, and it's my understanding that she kind of embodied all of femininity whereas these three showed a specific age or a specific um, section or a specific segment of your life. This was very interesting because you kind of saw the overall impact of these period pains and how it is universal across different age groups, how we tend to belittle ourselves into thinking that it's just us, and showing, or at least it's my interpretation, that showing one unified feminine symbol kind of encapsulates all of these different experiences. The only thing that I think they could have um, added or included was talking about trans men who can also undergo periods every month, and talking about their experiences, or even just slightly including their perspective as well. I understand this was kind of focused on women and women's health, but maybe they could have been included since they are people with uteruses and they also experience some of these things. Yeah, so these are my few thoughts about the two productions. Again, it was so beautiful. It was amazing to watch. Again, if this particular piece is performed again, I highly recommend people go watch it. The dialogue that comes along with both of these, especially the Menses saga, is something that we need to talk about. We need to remove the stigma that surrounds women's health. And this is such a beautiful beginning to the conversation. It's both the productions were definitely something where you need to think about it. And the reason that it took me so many weeks to just come up with this video was because I needed the ideas to just sit and marinate in my head before I had a video out. Both these two productions were extremely beautiful and very highly impactful. Again, I recommend watching this if it is performed again in a city near you. Thank you.